This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Currently. As you may know, Dan, he's stranded somewhere. He's gallivanting in the middle of the ocean. But we have enlisted the professional skills of No Other Pod's own Jimmy Mack. Jimmy, how are you doing today, man?
What's up? Thank you for having me. I know we've had you over on the other side on No Other Pod a couple times. I think this is my first Currently appearance, so I'm glad to fill in for Dan, who, like you said, he's God knows if he'll come back. He might just be, living in the Bahamas now, for all I know.
Saw some of his Instagram stuff. It looks so nice out there. I'm sure he doesn't want to come back.
He's drinking out of a coconut. He's living life. He's got a fedora that he bought that's made of straw, so he looks like he's having a great time.
Did he really?
In one of his images, he was wearing a fedora and drinking out of a coconut, so he's living it up.
He's living life. But, man, it's been such a frustrating weekend for Kansas City soccer.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Sporting losing a game that we needed to win.
Yeah.
And the Current losing a semifinal in the very last Challenge Cup ever.
Yep.
So it's been rough, man. What's your take on things?
It is a bummer. There's technically still some hope for both teams to make the playoffs, maybe Sporting a little more than the Current. But, it is interesting how parallel these two teams' seasons have been, where, the regular season really hasn't been it. And then there was maybe some hope, especially for the Current, of making a cup run. And then, like you said, heartbreaking finish, like we're going to talk about in this episode. And it's just, it's such a bummer because both of these teams on paper should be so much better than they are, especially the Current coming off the season they had last year and some of the roster moves that they made ahead of this season. There was a lot of hype about the Current coming into this year and really thought that they could challenge for some hardware, and things just haven't gone well. And obviously, I know you guys have talked about it a lot. The coaching changes and things just felt off from the beginning for the Current, it seemed like, and they've just had trouble getting on track. And, there's still, 4 games and now a new friendly left to talk about. So we'll see. But, definitely not the season that the Current had hoped for.
Yeah, the preseason polls and all the commentary and the narrative at the beginning of the year was, how is the Current affording to bring in all these players?
Right.
How is this possible? Like, everybody wanted more transparency, and typically I would too, but since it's the Current, I'm like, we don't need to know about that. No details.
Yeah.
But that was a narrative, and then to come in and we're currently in last place and we just got eliminated in the cup. It's tough, man. It's not how anybody predicted this season to go.
No, not at all. I mean, like you said, there were people that were kind of comparing what the Current were doing with some of their signings to be like, are they the Inter Miami of MLS? Like, how are they pulling all this off? And as we know, things have gone well for Inter Miami since all of their shenanigans. And unfortunately, it's gone kind of in the opposite direction for the Current. But you never know. I mean, there may be some changes this offseason to front office and coaching staff, and we'll see.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. But, Wednesday was tough because had we won, we would have had a home Challenge Cup final in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And just having that right there. I mean, this season's been very difficult, to have that right there in front of us and not be able to grab it is so tough. And you take a look at Sporting when they won the Open Cup, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember how they finished in the regular season. We don't know. Nobody remembers that.
You just remember they won.
And I feel like that would have been something that we could have all leaned on this year, just winning a trophy. It's also a lot of money for the players as well.
Yeah.
So, we had something to hold on to throughout the entire year, and it all came crashing down last week for the Current. So
it did.
It's been tough.
It's certainly a bummer. Let's get into a little bit what happened in this Challenge Cup game. If you look at least from my perspective, you look at the lineup that the Current put out, and I mean, all things considered, it's a pretty decent lineup on paper. And I guess this has been sort of the issue throughout the season is like the players. I know there's been injuries and there's been COVID protocols and there's been international call-ups. And so it's certainly not been smooth sailing for the Current or Sporting for that matter. But I mean, you look at who they have out there and it should be good enough, you would think, to get a result. but statistically, North Carolina was the better side, just basically up and down the stat sheet.
Yeah. We played North Carolina twice this year. We beat them and they beat us. I think we beat them by 1. They beat us by 1, but they're low scoring games. And then when you take a look at these teams, they're both coming in fairly healthy, not fully healthy, but fairly healthy, strong. Both teams are putting their best foots forward. Players are back from national team duty. And when I look at the starting lineup, there's one thing that kind of irks me a little bit, and that is Spanstra starting in the place of CC Kaiser.
Yeah.
CC Kaiser is one of our leading scorers. She flows so well within the team. And Spanstra is a rookie, and she's flashed a lot. She's done a lot of really good things. But in a semi-cup final, I want my best players out there. I want Kaiser out there. I feel like I know what the staff wanted to do, and that's bring Spanstra out there, use 45, 50 minutes of pure energy, wear out the defense, and then bring in CC Kaiser as kind of a super sub or somebody who can come in and really finish off the game with pace. That's what I think their intent was. That's not how things shook out.
No, not at all. And Kaiser ended up checking in the 55th minute, so he only got 35 minutes really, plus stoppage of Kaiser to be able to be in there, like you said, one of the best scoring options for Kansas City this year. If you look at what happened in the first half, there wasn't a lot. I mean, there weren't a lot of scoring opportunities, to be frank, for either team throughout the game. North Carolina did get 5 shots on goal to Kansas City's 3, but expected goals, North Carolina barely got over 1. Kansas City was under 1, so it's not great. In the first half, though, North Carolina definitely seemed to be the better side. Was that your take on it as well?
Yes. Yes, it very much was. And when we were at the game, obviously, and we were watching the current attack, the first half, and it was crickets. Like, we couldn't do anything. We tried to put the ball over the top. Their defenders were ready for it. I mean, North Carolina did such a good job of cutting off passing lanes, of putting ball pressure. The second we got the ball, we had somebody in our face. They're cutting off lanes everywhere. We would have to kind of make a panic pass, and that'd be hard. And then, the current player who would get it would have a tough time settling it because it was a bit of a disaster. And credit to North Carolina. I believe they have the best possession percentage of any team this year. So they play that percentage style of soccer. Sorry, the possession style of soccer.
Yeah.
They spread the field very well, and they just take control of that midfield. And this is basically what happened the very first game. Very first game we played them, it was almost the exact same thing in the first half.
So that leads me to a question then, and I guess it's hard to know because none of us are in the minds of the coaching staff, none of us are in the minds of the players, but like you said, similar to sort of what happened in the first game that North Carolina played us, is this more so than an issue of coaching preparedness and game plan than it is the execution of the players on the field? Where do you think the problems start for how this transpired, especially in the first half?
That's a good question. I think North Carolina deserve a lot of credit for what they did. They executed flawlessly. I do think that sometimes Coach Wehrblum, she tinkers too much. She takes pride in her tactics, and she knows a lot more about it than I do. But it just kind of feels like she does too much at times. And even when we beat them the first time around, they still had more possession.
Yeah.
But it just felt like the game was more evenly matched throughout the entirety of the game when we played them earlier and beat them. I don't know if it's execution on our part. I don't know if we were just as ready for it as they were. And they actually won the championship, or they won the cup. They won the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they won 2-0 against Louisville and dominated that game as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first half was just tough. It was forgettable. When I had to go look at highlights because I couldn't remember much about it. Nothing good anyway.
Yeah.
So the first half, man, it's just, just thankful that you're not down and you go into the half and, halftime and try to regroup.
Yeah. 0 shots on goal for the Current in the first half. And I think that kind of tells you that, like you mentioned, passing lanes were cut off. They're trying to play balls over the top. Honestly, it reminds me of a lot of when Sporting kind of gets into trouble and they can't break down in the midfield and create something up the middle. Last game, or 2 games ago, I guess I should say, for Sporting, they had some goals where there was like 37, 38, 39 passes where clearly the entire team, or just about every team member that's on the field, is involved. But when things aren't working for Sporting, it seems like the same thing that kind of happened to the Current happens, where they just start trying to fire off long balls, playing balls over the top. And at least to me, once you start defaulting to, well, we can't break them down, so let's just throw a ball in there and hope and see what happens. It's never really a recipe for success offensively.
Yeah, and you can see that urgency on the team in the first half. They would just put balls over the top to Dabinia. Mace would make a run. Izzy Rodriguez would make a run. Kristen Hamilton would make a run. But we could just never get on the end of it and turn it into any sort of effective offense.
Yeah.
So
it's not the best. Second half, things were a little bit better. It still did take about 12 minutes into the second half to get the first shot on goal, 57th minute. Cece Kaiser came in the 55th minute. So I don't know. You were saying that you wanted to see Cece Kaiser start. Is it a coincidence that Cece Kaiser checks in and then 2 minutes later the Current get their first shot on goal?
Absolutely not. I don't understand not starting Cece Kaiser. I want to know that, the reason for that decision. Was it tactical? Was it, maybe CC was dealing with some, fitness or injury? I don't know, but I don't know how you excuse that decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, she provided a spark, and a much, much needed spark.
Yeah, there were a number of dangerous opportunities for the Current. Obviously, 3 shots on goal. The majority of their expected goals came in the second half. We know that, there's I forget exactly if it was 6 minutes of stoppage time added or whatever it was.
7. Yeah.
7, yeah.
7.
But you get the stoppage time and it's 0-0, and you're thinking, okay, maybe regulation's going to end in a 0-0 draw, and we'll just reset and go from there. And then 1 minute of extra time left, and North Carolina found a way to break through in what just seemed like a little bit of a breakdown in the box for the Current.
Yeah, we made some subs in the 81st minute. Delfava came on for Hamilton. Lavoisier came on for Spanstra.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mimi Larson came on for Haley Mace. And then Stina came on for Izzy Rodriguez. I mean, these are all, in my opinion, these are to take PKs. There was no extra time for the cup, so it went straight into PKs. So all of these subs came on, in my opinion, just to, round out the game and put players who've handled that type of pressure on the national stage with, Stina and Lavoisier and Larson. All of them have played in the World Cup. So you bring on those players, you expect to go into penalty kicks.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel bad for Stina, national team defender. She comes in 2 minutes later, right? They score off of a corner kick. I mean, that ball came in, it ping-ponged around. You see one of our players try to clear it off balance. Just bad luck, bad timing, bad bounce. But Brianna Pinto, man, she was right there to put it through right in front of us, because we sit right there on the south stand.
Yeah.
I mean, it happened right in front of us, and you could just feel the energy and air leave the stadium. Yeah.
Well, and it is unfortunate. Like you said, Larson and Stina, they came in the 4th minute of stoppage time. There was only a few minutes left. So you're probably right. They're probably thinking penalty kicks there, because you don't know if there's going to be another stoppage. You want to get them in before the final whistle, because you have to pick your penalty kick takers based on who's on the field at the end of regulation. So yeah, you're thinking they're in there for penalty kicks. Teams don't usually like to sub players immediately before a set piece. So I don't know. It does make you wonder, I guess, a little bit if, there's some changes in assignments now suddenly, because the players who have been out there are not there. And then, unlucky bounced around in the box and couldn't quite get it cleared. And it's just heartbreaking to make it to literally 1 minute before penalties. And there's no guarantee. Maybe they would have lost to North Carolina in penalties. And I'm not sure what's more heartbreaking, but to get so close to what would essentially have been a 50-50 coin flip in penalty kicks and then have it taken away just really sucks.
I mean, we were making plans on, Saturday. Dan was talking about rearranging his flight to leave later so he can be here for the championship game. I mean, and it just kind of felt like, we weren't having a whole lot of success offensively. So, PKs would have been an opportunity for us to win. I mean, it just heartbreak is about the only way you could put it,
Yeah. PKs are kind of like the great equalizer. If when a game is kind of going how it was for the Current, you see this on the men's side all the time. If it's in a tournament that may end in penalty kicks, the team that's sort of getting dominated, that hasn't been sort of up to the standard of the opposing team, you almost just kind of use that as a strategy of like, just get it to penalties, and then you never know what's going to happen. We have a better chance if we can get it there. And they were close. They were so close.
You almost break the team mentally as well, right?
Yeah.
Like they know they were outplaying you, but they couldn't score. And then you go to PKs where it's just a coin flip.
Yeah.
That's tough to come back from mentally.
Yeah.
So
it's a bummer.
It is.
Well, let's take a break here real quick before we talk about sort of where the Current go from here and what the situation is for the rest of the season. So we'll take a break and we'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
All right, my friends, before we do move on, I just wanted to point out, I know you talked about how North Carolina dominated. You sent me some stats that you had put together before the game, and one thing that you highlighted that I think is really telling is it says that this was the Current's second lowest possession percentage all year, 35% possession for the entire game, and that's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, I agree. And oddly enough, our first lowest was I believe the first game of the year against North Carolina, and that was 33%.
Yeah, and
so,
I mean, North Carolina is a good team. They're third place in the table right now, with just a handful of games to go. 28 points, 2 points behind the league leading San Diego Wave. So certainly a good team. Obviously, the Current are in last place right now, unfortunately, with a meager 19 points and a -9 goal differential. Technically, if you do the math, they are still alive for the playoff race, but it's the top 6 who make the playoffs, right? And right now they're 7 points behind the Washington Spirit, who are in 6th place, and there's 4 games left in the regular season.
Yep.
So it's not looking good.
Mathematically, we're alive, but realistic math, it's tough.
Yeah. And it's not going to get easier because the San Diego Wave are the Current's next game. And even though there may be some international absences, but now you have the first place team in the league that you got to take on.
And I was trying to figure out before this whether or not they're going to be gone for national team duty. And I couldn't find much, but I did find that some of the other teams are sending their players for national team duty at the beginning of next week.
Mm-hmm.
So unfortunately, I think we'll still have to play, the Alex Morgan, Gurma, Jaden Shaw, who I believe are all called up. So
yeah,
it's going to be tough.
Yeah, and if you look at the San Diego Wave, they don't have the goal differential that Portland has. Portland's at +13, San Diego's at 6. But like you said, Morgan, Shaw, Gurma, they're some of the better players that you can face. How do you think Kansas City will approach this game? I think that's one of the more interesting questions because, like you said, mathematically, they're still technically in it, but functionally they may not be in it. So are we going to see the starters or what do you think?
Coach Feuerbloom, she's an interim coach, right? She's coaching for her job. So I think she'll probably put everything she has into, putting her best foot forward. So another loss doesn't hurt that much more. I don't see how she's our coach, next year.
Yeah.
But that's not going to stop her from putting her best foot forward. I think we're going to put together our best lineup. I'm really interested to see, if they're open to kind of shutting it down a little bit and then putting in some of the younger players, some of our depth players to see kind of what we have, because we're going to have to make some roster decisions before too long. And it'd be nice to see those players play a little more. We haven't seen them since early stages of the Challenge Cup.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to get another set of eyes on some of those players. But I think she's going to come out, and the team's going to come out and keep playing until they're mathematically eliminated.
Are there any players in particular that are some of those younger depth pieces that if it were up to you that you'd really like to see get some more minutes these last few games?
KU's own Rylan Childers, I like to see her get a couple more minutes. We've only seen her in a couple of Challenge Cup games. Chardonnay Curran, she's been on the team a couple of years now. We don't get to see her much. So I would like to see her get some more time. We're kind of in a weird situation because our injured players, if you take a look at the availability report, it's almost a starting 11 for another team. It really is. It's almost a starting 11. So some of these players, I don't know how we fit them on the team next year. So it's a little bit of, an audition or another set of eyes to see whether or not they're worth, trying to retain, or if, we let them go, or, we got 2 expansion teams coming on next year. So the expansion draft, there's so many moving pieces, but we know what we have in a lot of these players that have been playing. I would like to see what we have in some of the other pieces.
Yeah.
Make an educated decision as to what we're going to do.
For sure. Absolutely. The game Saturday night, it is going to be a little bit later kickoff. It's 9 p.m. local time because it is on the road in San Diego. So, knowing that the Current are traveling, that it's likely that San Diego's best players are going to be there and are going to be available. And San Diego are in first place, but they still, they're only in first place by 1 point. Portland's right there behind them. North Carolina is 2 points behind them. Between the 6th place team and the 1st place team, there's only 4 points. So the San Diego Wave by no means have the top seed locked up. So it feels like they're probably going to come out and put pedal to the metal, best foot forward, and be totally motivated to try to help secure that 1st place seed. Don't you think?
I do. I think there's money on the line too for winning the Shield. I think they do get some additional money for winning it. So, the players are going to be motivated. The Wave, they're a new team. This is their 2nd year. So for them to come in their 2nd year and win the Shield, there's probably a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
So, until you're mathematically eliminated, all these teams are going to be putting everything they have into this last 4-game stretch.
Yeah. You mentioned, I know, I'm sure you've talked about it before. I know you talked about it before. I got to ask, you mentioned that you think the Current will probably have a new full-time coach next year. Vlatko, he's hanging around out there. Do you have any sort of idea, like, is it possible that he makes a triumphant return, or do you think the Current should turn the page and sort of look more toward the future than the past?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. Depends on what day it is for me, right?
Yeah.
I don't have the best knowledge in terms of coaching for women's teams.
Sure.
It's weird because you don't a coach will join a team and you'll have no idea who that coach is.
Right.
Right. They may come from Europe. You may not have the singlest, a clue about them. Like Coach Huerblum, she coached in Sweden, came over as an assistant. Now she's our interim coach. So, and a lot of these coaches that joined LA, I don't know a whole lot about them. So it's really tough to gauge the market.
Sure.
But the relationship Vlatko has with the Longs, with Kansas City, he has a good relationship with the Current. He obviously lives here. So I don't see how he is not, a top 2 or 3 choice for this front office.
For sure. Yeah. Like you said, it's certainly harder in the NWSL. It has not been around as long as a league like MLS. And even MLS hasn't been around that long, but MLS you're starting to see is sort of developing its own coaches. Players are then becoming assistants for, two teams, and then are becoming head coaches of two teams, and then assistants on first teams. And there's sort of been a coaching pipeline there. And even if a coach gets fired in for one team, that they're coveted enough that they might still land another head coaching gig or an assistant gig at another team. I don't think NWSL is quite there yet, probably, at least one in terms of the number of teams. There's 12 teams in the league right now, compared to whatever it is, 29, 30 in MLS, ever growing. So it will be interesting to see for me as NWSL continues to grow and add more teams, like you said, 2 more coming next year, how the coaching development in the women's league continues, because I think that's an underrated thing to honestly just grow the game in the States as well. You want to develop players, but you want to develop coaches who can coach the players starting at a younger age in academies and whatnot to continue to learn how to play the game and eventually make it onto an NWSL team and hopefully keep the NWSL as the best women's league in the world. So we'll see.
And I completely agree. And I will say this, the Longs in this front office, they're going to try and bring the best available, right? We have our own training facility, first ever women's specific sports stadium. That's got to be very attractive for any coach out there, right?
Yeah,
they don't have to go play on a, I don't know, share the field with men, or
sure,
it's going to be so much easier for them to do their job. So I imagine we're going to be an attractive option. Yes. I definitely have to believe so. And we put a lot of money into the roster too.
Sure.
We're not going to skimp out on that. So to come and coach the likes of Franch, Dabinia, Hannah Gloss, and some of these other really talented players, Michelle Cooper, that's got to be attractive for any coach.
And I think you make a good point about the new stadium next year. I mean, they've put almost $100 million into that new stadium. Yeah. They're not going to want a season like this to happen in the first year of that gorgeous brand new stadium. It's probably a good thing if it were going to happen any year that it's this year. And like you mentioned, if you look at the injury report, you could almost fill out a starting 11 of another team with who's unavailable. It does give almost a built-in mulligan year to an extent for a club. I mean, you can only do it so many times. You look at even Sporting this year, and some people are like, well, you said injuries last year, and now you're saying injuries again this year. And even if there's some validity to it, the fans get a little antsy. But I think you're right. This is a destination job for a coach who wants to coach a fantastic team who is still in the best women's league in the world, even if other leagues are starting to catch up. And they're going to have the best facilities in the world as well. So it should be a matter of whoever the Longs want to go out and get, they'll be able to go and get, because it's such an attractive proposition for a coach. So
yeah, I agree. I'm with you.
Absolutely. Well, before we move on to talking about some of the other news around the current in the league, want to tell you a little bit about DraftKings Sportsbook. Football is back in full swing with another week of epic games. And who's got you covered on the action for every single one of them? DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. New customers can bet $5 on football and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Nobody's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Get in on the NFL Week 2 action with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the app now and use code KCSN to sign up. New customers can bet just $5 and take home $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code KCSN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/football terms for eligibility, terms and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
All right, my friend. So, as we mentioned, I think there's 4 games left in the regular season. A bit of an uphill climb for the Current to be able to claw their way back into playoff contention. But there's another game that was just announced. October 4th at Children's Mercy Park, which is in part a celebration of Hispanic Heritage Night. The Kansas City Current are going to be playing the women's side for CF Monterrey, a Mexican team. This is, I believe, their first international friendly. So what are your thoughts about this sort of showcase game?
I'm excited. I'm super excited. It kind of takes the sting out of how this season has went. I love watching international teams play, even with sporting, right? Whenever you have an international team, it's just so much fun. It's a different vibe, a different feel. And the fact that the Longs in this front office are doing this, I absolutely love it. I'm super excited. Yeah, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Night is also, really cool as well. But, when I first saw this, my jaw dropped because I didn't expect it, especially in the middle of a season, right?
Sure.
Who would have expected this? But I cannot be more excited, man. I got my tickets right away.
And tickets are pretty cheap. I think you can get like $12 tickets for general admission, somewhere around there. So if you're listening to this podcast, I'm sure you've been to a Current game. If you haven't been to a Current game, maybe cost has been a factor. This is a way to get in there, experience an atmosphere at Children's Mercy Park before they move to the new stadium for pretty affordable. And like you said, to see another team from another league in another country, I 100% agree with you. It's so much fun. That was one of my favorite aspects of the Leagues Cup that I think I didn't expect over on the MLS side is how much fun it was to watch some of these Liga MX clubs come in and just to play a team that you're not used to seeing on the field with an MLS side. And I have a feeling this is going to be the same for the KC Current, seeing them play a team like CF Monterrey, who just you're not used to seeing them. It's not one of the other 11 teams that you play on a regular basis. It just adds a spark and excitement that you don't get typically, even if it is a friendly.
Yeah, and I think they're 5th in their league too. So, a pretty solid team.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm super excited about it. Hope they have a lot of fun merch. But what this signals to me, though, is like once they get their new stadium, they'll have their own schedule, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The things they're doing is under the schedule of Children's Mercy Park. So this is just another indicator of how fantastic it really is to have the Longs in this front office and what their overall plan is. We had Danny Welniak on, and she was talking about how Angie Long, they got a 50-year lease down there with the Port Authority, and they have so many ideas of what they want to do with that stadium.
Sure.
Concerts, other sports, other like collegiate championships. But to have, your first international friendly against the Mexican team, I'm super excited. But to me, it just signals what they're going to do moving forward. And we got lucky to have an ownership group who's invested so much time, so much money, and this is going to be normal for us moving forward. And I cannot be more excited.
You're probably right. I didn't think about that, honestly, but the fact that now there's world-class training facilities and there will be a world-class stadium, I wouldn't be surprised to see more international teams, big-name international teams, some more English women's teams that maybe come over and play friendlies that know I have a stadium that's world-class and I have training facilities that are world-class. And maybe we'll see some more of these showcase games and see some more international, Chelsea women's team or whatnot come over and play friendly. It'd be super cool. So
I have no doubt that they want to do that, and I'm sure they're probably working on it as we speak. Something down the road.
Absolutely. There was actually a little bit of roster news, it's not an incoming player for the Current. Obviously with only a handful of games left, that's not going to happen. But their third string goalkeeper, Jordan Silkovitz, she was loaned out to the Brisbane Roar in the A-League. So what do you think is going on with this move? Is this just to get her a little bit more experience?
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. She never got to play this season. Yeah. She's dealt with a couple of injuries. She had a wrist and hand injury. Australia's league, they're getting ready to start it and ready to end ours. So it's a good way for her to go out there, get some experience, because she was not going to beat out AD Franch or Cassie Miller to play any this year. So I think it's a good move. I don't know how much money they're making from it, from the loan, but probably more than anything, it's just get the players some experience.
Well, and I'm curious now. I mean, I don't think we'll be able to watch A-League games over here, at least not in the typical way where we can watch NWSL. But I am curious, after the Women's World Cup was just held jointly between New Zealand and Australia, and the Matildas for Australia performed so well throughout the tournament. I'm hopeful that translates to some excitement for the A-League over there, and maybe Jordan and the Roar and the rest of the A-League teams can get a little bit of sort of that World Cup bump and continue to build on a league over there, because their national team performed admirably throughout the entire tournament, making it all the way to the semifinals, I believe.
Yeah, I'm happy about the move. She was one of those players that we talked about getting some experience on games that don't necessarily matter for like the regular season. She's one of those players I would have liked to see. So I'm glad she's gonna go out there and get some experience and play at a professional level.
Yeah, for sure. As we move toward the end of the NWSL season, there are a few dates coming up they seem like they're sort of like roster mechanism dates. Last day to waive players, September 19th. Then there's a waiver process on Thursday, September 21st, which is last day to take options on upcoming free agents. And then September 22nd is the roster freeze date. Free agents can begin negotiations on that day. So, I mean, we're coming up on that. That's only, between, a week to 10 days away before this process starts. So you mentioned maybe some turnover for the Kansas City Current this year. Are there any moves that you expect, or any players maybe that are on the Current right now that you think we should keep an eye on as some of these roster transactional dates are coming closer?
So I believe we have 4 players who have an option for 2024. That would be Claire Lavoisier, Gabrielle Robinson, Izzy Rodriguez, and Jenna Weinbrenner. And I think we should really bring back 3 of the 4. I would like to bring back all 4, but when you have such a competitive roster, so much depth, not everybody's going to make it. And that's not an indication on the player. That's just an indication on how strong this roster is.
For sure.
Not everybody can make it. I would like to see Claire Lavoisier come back. Absolutely. Gabrielle Robinson, she was a rookie this year, and she played very admirably. She had to fill in with another young player in Croy Soto when Elizabeth Ball was out. But the one thing I don't know is we brought in 2 world-class center backs, and we have Elizabeth Ball. I don't know if they're going to want to carry 4 on the team, but I would like to think that they want to keep her around. She performed well. She flashed a lot. She has a great build. So I would love to see her back. And then Izzy Rodriguez, she's been a mainstay of this team.
Sure.
She worked her way into the starting lineup, and once she did, you can't bring her off. She's so incredibly versatile. She can play in the midfield. She can play on the back line. And then Jenna Weinbrenner, who I like a lot as well. She didn't get a whole lot of playing time this year. Her positional versatility has gotten better, but it's going to be tough to beat out some of those more experienced players for that spot.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is unfortunate. I mean, we've seen it with Sporting too, where sometimes there are players that you really like that you'd like to be able to find a spot, and there's just no room. Jenna, I believe, is also on the coaching staff with the Kansas City Comets too. So if she doesn't stay with the Current, I'm guessing that she wouldn't continue on the coaching staff there. But it will be interesting. I mean, it's always I feel like certainly on the sporting side, sometimes there's surprises as to, like, okay, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that person got their contract, option picked up, or that maybe they re-signed, but I didn't think they would re-sign for quite that much. So
Right.
We'll see what happens with the NWSL dates coming up. What does seem to be on the horizon is NWSL expansion. The commissioner, Jessica Berman, talks about how they expect the next round of expansion to be joining for the 2026 season, and they expect that to be 2 teams. There's nothing more to share. She says, I don't really have any more news to share about that, and certainly if and when we have news to share about Boston. So what do you – I mean, we've gone through this like hyper-accelerated expansion decade with MLS. Is that the direction you see NWSL going? Just like as they continue to have more success, they're going to continue to add more and more teams year over year?
I think so. I think there's a lot of markets that are starved for women's soccer right now that would do exceptionally well. Boston is one of those 2 that I think everybody's been talking about, everybody's been referencing. I think there's actually I don't want to say it's a party, but like the NWSL Boston like ownership group is having an event that's scheduled out there. So it's really just a strong indication of they're probably one of the 2 teams. It's
Sure.
not official yet, but I'm happy that they're expanding, but I just want them to do it the right way. I want quality over quantity. I don't want them just to, start expanding all willy-nilly.
Yeah.
The tough thing too is, we put a lot of hard work into our rosters, and then the expansion draft is always, a heartbreaking event because you grow to love these players, and
Sure.
you have no control, as to who other teams select.
And it's Utah and San Francisco, I think, that are coming in next year. Is that right?
Yep.
So you're going to have 2 teams that are going to be going back and forth with expansion picks. So the sporting fans are well versed in losing some players via the expansion draft. So we'll see. There will be a list of protected players by the Current. That same thing that's happened if you're familiar with the MLS expansion process. This has happened in NWSL before when the San Diego Wave, like you mentioned, and Angel City came in a couple years ago. So it's happening once again, but we'll see what happens. So it's certainly a lot of exciting news surrounding NWSL and the growth of the league. And I feel like as the women's World Cups and the women's national teams have found so much success, not just here in the U.S., but worldwide, it really seems like it's helping drive growth of women's leagues across the world. NWSL, obviously, one of it probably still the best league in the world, but it feels like we're starting to see other leagues catch up. And that'll be interesting to see how that affects the player pool that's available to NWSL teams, because if they're not the best league in the world, it might create some more competition. So I don't know. We'll see, but I'm excited to see what transpires over the next few years.
Yeah. And with the new CBA, they increased, the salary per year that teams can spend on players. So obviously as that money increases, you're just going to bring in better and better
Right.
players. So, maybe it's me being selfish, and I know my team is going to
Sure.
spend the money. We may be a mid-market city in a way,
Yeah.
but we're certainly not a mid-market ownership group or a mid-market team,
Right.
even if we are in 12th place at the moment. But
Well,
we're gonna do what it takes to win in any capacity, and that's what makes me really excited to have this ownership group.
Well, and like you said, I mean, the facilities are going to be second to none in the entire world. So even if it is not New York or Los Angeles or Chicago, there's none of those teams are going to be able to compete with the stadium and the practice facilities that the Current have. So that's why you see players like Dabinia who are willing to come to Kansas City when they had offers elsewhere. So
Taking less money too, I'm sure.
Yeah,
because they want to come and have their own stadium, have their own training facility.
for sure.
Just, make it their own. It's a huge competitive advantage, I would think, for this team.
Yeah, absolutely. Outside of NWSL, there is an international window coming up. The U.S. women's national team announced their roster for the upcoming friendlies against South Africa. There are no current players who are on that roster, and I know that we're still a little over a week away, but these are just friendlies. They're 2 back-to-back within a few days of each other against South Africa, but anything in particular on the international scene? This is the first time I guess we're probably seeing the women's national team really in any sort of action since the World Cup disappointment. So what are you looking for there?
Jaden Shaw, I think she's like 19 or 20 for the Wave. She's flashed a lot. She's done a lot of really good things in her rookie year. She's in that call up. So I want to see how she does. It's basically, I believe it's the send off for Julie Ertz and Rapinoe, I think. So, it'll be nice to send them off and usher in a new wave of younger players. So it's really, this is signaling, along with the World Cup, just a transition from an older generation to where we are today. So, yeah.
Cool. It's going to be exciting to watch as the U.S. women's national team continues to transition from arguably the best women's national team generation, best women's soccer generation that has ever played to whatever the future is. A lot of bright young players. So it'll be fun to keep an eye on that. I think that's about all we had this week. You got anything else that you want to cover before we call it good for this week?
No, man, I think that's it. I appreciate you hopping on.
For sure.
Spending some time with us. First current episode.
Yeah, so. It's been awesome. I don't think I took Dan's job. So assuming he comes back from living it up in the Bahamas, he should be here back as normal next week. But I really appreciate you having me, man. It's been a good time.
Yeah, and I will be in Turkey for the next 2 weeks. So who knows? You may have to come back. I don't know.
We'll travelers.
See. Yeah, and you're going to be gone, I believe, later this year.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in England in early December, doing like a little soccer pilgrimage, if you will, to go see. If you listen to no other pod, I'm an Everton fan, so I'm used to being near the bottom of the table. But my youngest brother and I are both Everton fans, so we want to go see a game at Goodison before they move out. So, and before they probably get relegated. So we'll see.
That's awesome. Should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, looking forward to it. So yeah, man. Thank you for having me. You want to take us home on this one?
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for listening in, and hopefully Dan shows back up. So
we're waiting for you, Dan. So, all right, y'all. Thank you so much. We'll see you.